Well, let me go face scan. Hi, YouTube. Hey, welcome on in. I hope you guys are enjoying this part of the series, which is literally light novel reading chapters as we psychoanalyze and talk about pretty much everything. Guys, we are literally going to be stopping and talking and going through everything because that's the way that we do it. You know, it's always important to go ahead and get a bigger understanding of the characters and whatnot. We're going to try our best once the episodes and whatnot the series comes back in. But no, of course, we're not going to read the entire chapter. I'm sorry. If like less than 10 pages last us an entire hour, can you imagine what 100 pages would do? It's going to be like, that'd be a whole day. That would be literally a whole day worth of like streaming to try and understand like what's happening there. So giving you guys that heads up, dude, we tend to do this every Friday and Sunday here on stream. So come on over and join us, dude, if you guys like this, or here on YouTube, where you guys are probably going to be getting them week by week by week, especially as we get closer to Mushoku Tensei. Guys, I will also make this announcement. We will also probably have SB from Espirito Analysis or Spirito Otaku, and more than likely some other amazing content individuals or amazing content creators joining us for some readings and stuff, you know, for some analysis. I'm so excited. I just can't wait to show you guys. Can't wait to dive on deep. With that being said, why don't we go ahead and just jump into it, yeah? Dinner between Paul and Rudius, Chapter 6, 1 week in Millishion. The next morning, I headed over to the headquarters of the search and rescue squad to let Paul know about her plans. The HQ itself is a perfectly ordinary two-story building. It didn't take long for me to find my father. He was hard at work in what seemed to be a conference room, discussing something or another with roughly a dozen other men. I could make out snatches of the conversation from outside. It seemed they were preparing a large operation of some kind. From the way Paul looked the other day, I'd assume he spent every day in Millishion, either getting drunk or nursing a hangover. But maybe my timing had just been bad. Right now, he was a picture of a focused, competent leader. I was impressed, despite myself, at least until someone alluded to the fact that he'd skipped a month's worth of meetings while on a massive bender. From the sound of things, it was only yesterday that he'd abruptly gotten motivated again. It was most likely because Paul wanted to show me his better side. In other words, he'd gotten back to work because of me. Goodness gracious, the boys do love showing off for me. With a theatrical sigh, I decided to wait for Paul to find a little free time. Absolutely true. Let's be real. The inciting incident, right, is Rudy. I feel like Rudy is the reason why a lot of people... Rudy is like, I don't know how to put it. When Orsted said, "Who are you?" to Rudy, I feel it's because Rudy is the hands of change from the author going in there, right? And so Rudy being there literally makes people start the process of change, right? Rudy is chaos. Rudy is something that should not be in this world. Rudy should not be in this world. And for Paul to quite literally start changing and developing in the way that he is, it might be something small, but we also have to recognize the prime mover. Yes, so like it could be like Subaru, or could it be like Al? Is Al maybe it may be an abnormality in that case? Who knows? But in this situation, what I'm really trying to get at is like, for Paul to literally get up the next morning and be like, you know what, I have to fucking turn things around out of that conversation that he had. That's how you know that that was a deep, really, really fucking deep impact. The conversation with Geese and his introspective moment that he had really did have on him. That's fucking huge, dude. And it's awesome to see that Paul is just able to go and be like, you know what, I fucked up. I have to be better and I have to show that I'm better, right? It's like he has his family that he really needs to look out for. Sitting around the room outside might get boring, so I opted to wander around the building for a while. After a few minutes of exploration, I came across my little sister Norn at play. She was in a room that seemed to be serving a nursery, playing blocks with a bunch of other kids around her age. "Hey there," I said, raising a hand and greeting as her eyes met mine. Norn started in a surprise, then scowled and hurled a wooden block in her hand, which I managed to catch. "Go away! This didn't strike me as the friendliest way to say hello." Had I done anything to make her upset with me? The only thing that came to mind was that time I beat the crap out of Paul before her eyes. Yeah, that probably had something to do with it. Victor's note. No shit, Sherlock. Father and I made up with each other. Norn, I protested gently. In response, she shouted, "You liar!" and scampered off as fast as her little kids could carry her. Apparently, my baby sister hated my guts now. That was a bit of a downer. I didn't want to upset her with my presence, so I headed back over to the closest thing the building had to a waiting room. As I sat down in the corner, a number of heads turned in my direction. I recognized at least a couple of the guys who spotted kidnapping Samal the other day. I was starting to get the feeling that I might not be too popular in this place, but before I really had the time to bathe in the awkwardness, a familiar woman walked into the room and all eyes were suddenly on her. It was the bikini-armored lady, back to her old half-naked ways. She spotted me immediately and walked right over to me. "Good morning," I said. "Good morning," she replied with a smile and a small tilt of her head. "Did you need something from us today?" "Yes, I'm here to see my father. What was this lady's name again? I felt like Paul hadn't told me. Pardon me, I haven't introduced myself, have I? My name is Rudius Greyrat. Miss..." Rising to my feet, I put one hand on my chest and offered an aristocratic bow. My name's Viera," replied the bikini-armored lady, her hands fluttering anxiously in the air. "I'm a member of Captain Paul's squad." She proceeded to return my bow after offering me a truly irresistible view of her cleavage. Oh, God. "Hi, Master Altier. How you doing?" What a time to come in. What a time to come in. Okay. And my thing is, why do I feel like Norn and is it Aisha? No, I'm confused. What is Rudy's other sister's name? It's escaping my brain for a second. Also, yeah, how you doing, Masters? How'd you find the channel and everything? I hope you're doing well.
Yeah,
Aisha.
This is big brain time.
For some reason, whenever I said Aisha, it immediately thought of the streamer, you know, Aisha, and I thought I fucked up. That's why I was like, wait a minute, what? So why do I feel like Norn and Aisha are taking two completely different like paths in life at the moment, right? We have Norn, who's playing with blocks, who's like in a way like playing with others and learning this whole empathetic route and whatnot, even though she hates her brother and whatnot, but play is how you empathize with others. So I feel like she might go through a more creative route, a more route of like empathizing nature and coloring and all of these things, while Aisha on the other hand will probably be like, she can probably lead a fucking business if you're not careful, you know? Like Aisha on the other hand is like, you know what, like I have to be able to go out and impress. I have to meet the expectations of my brothers in that sort of sense, you know? Yes, Aisha. Yeah, what brought you? I don't know. I just felt like watching him. Oh, thank you, Master Altair. Makes sense. Are you guys good? Who knows, man? I don't think so, man. Aisha's too smart to play with blocks. Yeah, Aisha's too smart to play with blocks, and Aisha would probably find a way to make money off of those blocks. She'd find a way to try and impress others with her knowledge on those blocks. Aisha's something else, dude. Aisha's just automatically incredible. But that's what I'm saying. It's like I feel like it's two different routes, which is true. Hey, every kid is different, you know? But through this, I actually like the fact that he's introducing himself to others, even despite the influences and the aspect of that. So socialized versus being less socialized. Exactly. But even through that, here's a good way of bringing this up so people don't like, because I always talk about like I internalize and externalize stuff quickly, like in terms of my understanding of characters and stuff. And this is where my brain instantly went through. This is the nicest streamer I watch. Master Altier, you're incredible, dude. I hope you know that. I hope you're practicing some self-care, dude. Legitimately. When it comes to this, right? Put Aisha in here and put Norn in here. And what do you have? You'll have probably, right, Aisha, whose home was displaced, right, who had to go ahead and live with her mom, who was with the creepy dude, right, whose schooling was mostly done by her mom, right? The neighborhood wasn't in the nicest neighborhood, so on and so forth. You can go ahead and go through a scenario like this where they were trying to capture her, the guards were trying to capture her, and so on and so forth. What does that do to a kid in this environment? Makes them more resilient, makes them more capable of thinking logically as to how to survive, right? Because you have a lot of pressure coming in. Parents' workplace, she was a maid, right? Her dad might have been a knight, but her mom's a maid. So you put, I need this infographic. It is on my Discord. This is, yeah, Bronfenbrenner's Ecological Theory. It's one of my favorite all-time things to reference for any, literally any therapist, any psychologist coming in. And that's why, yeah, it's hashtag wizard theories. It doesn't include direct spoilers or future scenes, but does include new posts. Yeah, sure, I don't mind it. I wouldn't mind reading it. Community, agency, so on and so forth. So this is how I get the idea that both of them are going to grow up to be completely different, like, areas of expertise or in their life or whatever, right? Anyway. Oh my god, already in Discord. Whoa. Dot hacker. Oh, dude, I appreciate you, man. Anyway, let's continue. Oh, thanks so much for the follow, Master Altair. Dude, you're absolutely wonderful. You're a goat. Guys, drop some Doritos. We have a new follower. That's amazing. Appreciate you. You help out a ton, man. This girl was really a sight for sore eyes, or even non-sore eyes. Honestly, I just resolved to cut back on my perverted behavior, so I didn't want to stare. But I couldn't seem to look away. All my good intentions were meaningless in the face of a chest gravitational pull. The outfit was just unfair. I'm very sorry I was rude the other day. My father's something of a womanizer, so I'm afraid I got the wrong idea. No, it's all right. Fellas is the best boy. Thanks so much for the follow. I think you might be right. Fellas is a good boy, but I think Otto might be the best boy. How you doing, by the way? No, it's all right. I can understand why you think that, given how I was dressed. Vieira emphasized her words by shaking her head vigorously. Certain other parts of hers also moved as a result. Oh, Rudy, why are you thinking the way I think? The bikini armor did seem to be fixed in place to some degree, but it wasn't enough to keep her from jiggling when she made sudden movement. Those things were big after all. Whoops, I was doing it again. With an effort of will, I managed to tear away my eyes away. I'm not sure it was a great idea to hang out around a bunch of men in that armor if you can help it, miss. I'd imagine some people might find it a bit distracting. Maybe you could put a cloak over it at least? Vieira smiled awkwardly. I'm sorry, but there's a reason that I wear this. Maybe I was imagining things, but it felt like a lot of people were looking over at me all of a sudden. Had I said something I shouldn't have? Well, whatever. I'd have to ask Paul about this later. Do you know when Father's meetings will be over? Mira cocked her head thoughtfully to one, saying, "Well, he has a whole month of work to catch up on at the moment. I expect he might be busy for a while." All right then. When you get a chance, could you let him know I'm planning to live Millishion in 7 days from now? Really? That seems awfully soon. Well, it's what we're used to at this point. I see. In that case, let me go get Shira for you. Just a moment, please. With that, Vieira pattered off somewhere or other. A few minutes later, she returned with the familiar robed healer. But yeah, dude, sexual trauma presents itself in many ways, realistically speaking. And I know we talked about this earlier in that Paul chapter as well. It can cause people to either cover up or uncover up and even protect others along the same influences, right? As I'm going through this, one thing that's popping out to me is the fact that no matter what they're wearing, Rudy is still talking to them as like person to person and not talking down to them. I know that when he was mad, he was like, oh, Paul's womanizing, that type of thing. But Rudy has never talked down to these people. Ain't that something? In a world where noblemen talk down to others and like treat them like garbage, Rudy has not done so yet. Holy shit, boys. Holy shit, maybe Rudy is not as bad as others make him out to be. No, Chaos is best girl. Wait, Chaos Puppy? Oh, yeah, Chaos Puppy is. Rudy is not a noble. No, but he does have the semblances of at least like being in a power dynamic, man. And he always uses respectful suffixes in Japanese, yeah. Like, for example, he could be in a power over situation, which is, oh yeah, you work with my dad, let me go in and fucking talk down to you. But he doesn't. At any point in time, he has not done so. Or even influenced it, at least so far. So much more crap than what good Rudy gets. Yeah, same. Same. Like, I think Rudy gets a lot of shit for situations like this. And also him literally catching himself and like what he's like looking at. Wow. And what he's feeling. Oh, thanks so much for the wow. Woof. Rudy's something else. But I think in a situation like this, the only thing he can do is state his business and leave. When the girl saw I was looking at her, she let out a little gasp and stepped behind Vieira before saying anything. The captain's schedule is jam-packed at the moment, but he has some free time in the evening 4 days from now. Would you care to have dinner with him then? It's all right if he's too busy, you know. When he talks to you, the captain's full of life and energy. He's very busy, but I hope you'll come anyway. Shira's voice sounded composed enough, considering she was still hiding behind Vera. This girl really seemed to hate me, or maybe even fear me. No, that was kind of regrettable, but oh well. 4 days from now, right? Okay, then should I meet him at his inn? I'll make reservations for you at a restaurant or our squad frequently visits. Please head directly over there instead. Shira proceeded to calmly provide me with an exact time and location. We'd be eating at a place in the commercial district by the name of Lazy Millis. Just to be on the safe side, I asked about the dress code, but apparently there wasn't one. This felt kind of odd, like I was scheduling a business meeting with the CEO of some kind of major corporation. Paul had a secretary planning out his days now. The guy had certainly come up in the world. Will you be bringing a companion? Eris's face popped into my mind. But in the same instance, I recalled her shouting, "I'll kill that stupid jerk," as she stomped off to murder Paul. No, I think I'll come alone. With that, we'd ironed out all the details, so I took my leave. It's just what they did in so detail. Fine, Victor. Let's talk about that, though. Interesting that we're, like, even through that, you can tell how much Rudy cares about Eris. Because when asked this, his mind didn't go, "Oh no, I'm just gonna go." His mind went to, "Oh shit, I want to invite Eris, but I can't. I don't want to go ahead and ruin at least an interaction that we can have to talk about things or talk things out. I love Eris, but I can't bring Eris along with me." Like, dude, Rudy is a growing boy. Rudy is a boy that is actually probably a lot more emotionally intelligent than most people his age. Rudy's walking on his tiptoes. Yeah, but through that, it's also like Rudy's also one of the few individuals that I think, even while ascertaining everything that's going on, he has 7 days before he leaves, and he got punched, and he got to see a side of Paul that I don't think he ever got to see before. He didn't just take that and cry and break down. He took that and he's like, "Okay, let me try and fix this." It could be because of trauma response from his previous thing, but at the same time, he didn't have to put up with that. He didn't have to go ahead and say, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to try and fix this." But because if Rudy is who he is, he's like, "I have to try. I have to at least try and fix this. I have to make an attempt to rationalize a connection with Paul before I take off." Paul is busy now. Paul is doing shit. And what does Rudy do? "I'm going to extend an olive branch. I'm going to try and see what's going on. I'm going to try and communicate. I know we both punched each other and we're clearly on different talking terms, but this needs to be understood and said." That's deep. When Geese was talking to Paul about Rudy, and how Rudy is not your normal boy, he's absolutely right. Because Rudy is taking, while Paul is trying to go and change, the physical composure, and I'm a leader now, people depend on me type of thing, and Rudy's getting to see that firsthand. Rudy is taking that first step and saying, "Hey, when can I meet him? When can I talk to him? When can I go ahead and say something?" That's big. Anyway, give me a quick second, guys. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the AC again because it's getting really fucking hot. It is 10 p.m. at night. It's about to be 10 p.m. Whew. It is warm, ladies and gentlemen. Give me a quick second. I'll be right back. It is 90 degrees, man. 90 to 100 degrees already. Fuck. Ed is leaving for the AC. Does that mean chat can go wild? Oh, it was a quick one. It was a quick one, man. Okay, anyway. 3 days later, the day before my dinner appointment with Paul, I realized I didn't have anything to wear to the restaurant. There wasn't a dress code, and this wasn't just a family get-together. Still, the clothes I'd bought back in the Demon Continent looked a bit shabby on the streets of Millishion. So I headed out with Eris to do a little shopping. This probably qualified as a date, although it wasn't a particularly exciting one. Eris was never too motivated about buying clothes and tended to think everything looked fine. I figured I should take this chance to get her new outfits as well. From this point on, we'd been traveling in humankind's territory, and they say first impressions are all about how you present yourself. At the very least, I wanted us dressed well enough that people won't treat us rudely. I kind of wish I could turn to a friend who knew something about fashion for advice. But the only people I could even call acquaintances in this city were that monkey-faced newbie and Viera. And I had no idea where Geese was, and I wasn't friendly enough with Viera to ask her for a personal favor. Ultimately, I decided to study people going by until I had a feeling for things. Eris and I sat by a street and engaged in a bit of idle crowd watching. After a while, I noticed that blue clothing seemed somewhat popular at the moment. Also, some people had cloaks or jackets on, but many others didn't bother. The climate here was nice enough that most outerwear was on the lighter side. Looks like blue's in style right now, doesn't it? Blue doesn't work at all for you, Rudy, as... Wow, blood. Fortunately, I really didn't care that much about trends of the hour. What does work for me then? You've got that thing Geese gave you, right? Just go with that. She was talking about the fur vest, right? The thing that was a little big on me, though. It was long enough to make it look more like a coat. That said, it wasn't uncomfortable at all, so I did wear it sometimes. Mostly on colder days. That one's not a bad one, but I feel it's a bit too big for me. Yeah, I guess so. Why don't you just cut it down to size then? That could be a waste. I'm still a growing boy, remember? Chatting casually, the two of us picked up a few purchases. It didn't take long at all, which I chalked up to a mutual lack of interest. So it came as something of a surprise when at the very end, Eris chose a rather fashionable black dress embroidered with a small white rose. It's a date. It's a date, ladies and gentlemen. Like it or hate it. It's a date, going out to buy stuff. Do you really want this one, Eris? What? Do you have a problem with that? No, I bet it would look great on you. You don't have to flatter me, you know. After paying for a purchase as we headed back to the inn, finally the day arrived. In the afternoon, I let Ruijerd and Eris know that I'd be having dinner with my father that evening. Ruijerd said, "I'm glad to hear that." With a slightly relieving expression on his face, I could actually see the happiness in his eyes. From the looks of things, he very much wanted me to leave the city on good terms with my father. Not that he had any cause to worry, of course. I was going to take full advantage of this family bonding opportunity. "I'm coming too," announced Eris. Turning, I found her staring me down in her usual arms akimbo pose. What? Is that a problem? If it wasn't for the other day, I would have immediately given in. But Eris clearly felt some hostility towards my father. This was probably an understatement. In fact, it seemed like she hated his guts. I could understand how she felt to some degree, but I'd already decided to make nice with Paul. If that was the only issue, I might have brought her down with me and tried to get the two of them on better terms. But this dinner was going to be our first meal as a family in many years, you know. And I hadn't patched up things with Norn yet. Also, I did say I'd be coming to the restaurant alone. Would you mind staying here instead, Eris? Oh. Rudy, you could have brought Eris along and been like, "This is my family too. Hey. Rudy could have come down with Riz and literally been like, "Hey, family number one, meet my family." But no, realistically, I think psychologically speaking, Rudy is in between a rock and a hard place. Because at the end of the day, this is all for him. Hey, yo, Ed with the Riz. I know, but realistically, like, Rudy is in between a rock and a hard place. Because say that he decides to just, like, not patch things up with Paul, right? Then all of a sudden he has a bad image left there. You'll probably have a lot of guilt left there. If he goes with Paul and doesn't take Eris with them, Eris, it's that, like, self-announcement type of thing. She has to come into a self-understanding that, hey, this is family time. You know, even inaction could put him in a bad situation. And this is actually really interesting just to see how the way he's thinking things out and how Eris actually plays a fundamental role in, like, his decisions, right? And how he talks to her, and how even in the little date they're actually able to bond and increase, like, moments of self-growth. And that's what I'm finding beautiful in this whole thing, man. All things considered, I wanted Eris to show a little self-restraint. Carrying a bomb into the middle of a raging forest fire didn't strike me as the best of ideas. Formally introducing her to family could wait until the two of us got a little bit more intimate than where we were right now. Yes, I wouldn't mind coming. I wouldn't mind. I'm coming too. Got it? Victor's note. Last time I left you alone and went hunting goblins, you got all depressed and shit. I ain't letting that happen again. If anyone upsets you, they're going to get a free demonstration of the silent sword. Also, I want to properly meet my future father-in-law and show him I'm a proper lady. I mean, silly me. The word self-restraint wasn't a part of Eris's vocabulary. Rudyard, could you say something here? When I turned back to Rudyard in search of help, I found them holding a hand to his chin and the stot. His intense gaze moved from my face to Eris's, then back again. You've made up with your father, haven't you? It shouldn't be a problem, then let her come along. Wow, stabbed in the back. Was this the same guy who'd punched Eris to stop her from intervening last time? Oh well, I guess I'd have to let a majority rule on this one. Well, if you say so, Rudyard. What did you expect? Just one thing, Eris. I want to stay on good terms with my father, so please be polite to him, okay? Fine. Judging from her tone of voice, she had no intention of actually keeping that promise. Not exactly reassuring. Afterwards, I went upstairs to put on my brand new clothes and headed over to the restaurant as a brand new me, also known as Nudius. Not to be confused with Nudius. Like, Nudius is completely different from Nudius, you know? Nudius. Oh no. Nudius is a different kind of beast. Nudius is
hey yo,
you know, Eris tagged along in the black dress we thought we'd get the other day. I did my best to avoid the narrow side streets. There were a lot of kidnappers lurking in those dark alleys, and they could get a little violent in some places. No reason to risk our new clothes as they're getting messed up. The main avenues had their dangers too, of course. Since it was around dinner time, quite a few people were buying something like yakitori from the outdoor stalls. If I bumped into one of those guys, the result would no doubt be tragic. And if one of them walked into Eris, her Boreas punch would leave both of us drenched in their blood. As a precautionary measure, I kept my eye of foresight active by constantly looking 1 second into the future. I was able to navigate us through the crowds safely. I felt a bit bad for using such a powerful ability for something this mundane, but at least we reached our destination without incident. The whole thing with the reservations had gotten me a little nervous. As it turned out, though, Lazy Millis was a perfectly ordinary place. It was a standalone bar and restaurant, not part of any inn. Most of the clientele seemed to be relatively respective locals. When I gave my name to the waiter up front, he brought me and Eris to our table immediately. The fact that there were two of us went unremarked on. Paul was already sitting at the table with an awkward smile on his face, along with the very grumpy-looking Norn. Oh, this would have been cute to animate. This would have been so cute to animate. Can you just imagine just Paul, like, awkward, trying to do an awkward face, and Norn just being like... Sorry, am I a bit late? Nah, sorry about this, kiddo. Shira got kind of carried away for some reason. I told her the usual place would be fine, but nothing wrong with the change of pace every once in a while, right? Started to pull out my chair, then I stopped as I noticed Eris was looking rather grumpy herself. This technically wasn't the first time she'd met Paul, but maybe introducing them would be a good idea. Father, this is Eris. As I told you the other day, she's Philip's daughter and the member of the Boreas. Oh, right. Cutting me off mid-sentence, Paul rose to his feet and turned to Eris. He straightened up and put one hand to his chest and lowered his head slightly. It was a practice bow, no less smooth than Philip's. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance, miss. I'm Paul Grey Rat. Rudy is his father. Taken aback, Eris tried to glance at me, but couldn't manage to totally break eye contact with my father. I'm Eris Grey Rat, sir. The expression on her face was still grumpy. Nonetheless, she grabbed the end of her dress and gave an awkward little curtsy. It felt like she missed her chance to start screaming or throwing punches. Paul literally disarmed her. I'll get to the end of the sentence and I'll tell you what I mean. I had to admit, I was impressed with Paul. Apparently, he learned a thing or two about handling girls from his years as a womanizer. Since when could he pull off a bow like that, though? All right, then, why don't we all sit down? In any case, her family dinner got underway without any bloodshed. The way he completely disarmed her. You're at a public event, right? You might know that, like, there might be some animosity or something in the air. You don't know what may become. But the moment that I show respect to you, right, in some way, shape, or form, what does that do? We're in public, and I do like a grand gesture of a bow or something in front of others. Anyone. Paul, in a way, he's smooth with it, but that's also like a 5D play. It also puts the pressure on her side. Yeah, he doesn't throw the first punch physically. Exactly. Exactly. It throws the pressure over to her side, because if she decides to throw the first punch, all of a sudden people have been looking in, right? Oh, he did the classical, like, yo, this is like some big person. This is a big shot. The big shot doesn't like I think he's had plenty of practice. Yeah, but that's the thing is, like, nobility back in the day, that's what a lot of people did. A lot of people played these pleasantries, and whenever there was an outbreak or someone broke the routine, it was big news. It was rumors and shit that spread everywhere, you know, even in big traumatic situations. I think Paul was just being like, this is like a natural occurrence for him, just to be nice and courteous and whatnot, and this is sort of the end result. But psychologically speaking, like, looking in, this is something that's like, oh shit, he like psychologically disarmed her without her even knowing. Paul is advancing water god style, just dodging that argument. Hold on. Eris and I settled onto our seats for the moment. Eris was keeping quiet, but it was obvious she'd bare her fangs in an instant if things took a wrong turn. Paul still looked a bit uncomfortable, and as for Norrin, well, she hadn't even glanced at me yet. And long story short, the mood wasn't so great. Maybe it really was a mistake for me to bring Eris with me. It seemed like I wasn't the only one who found the situation a bit awkward. After a few moments of silence, Paul turned to Norrin with a troubled expression on his face. Come on, kiddo. Your big brother's here. See? Why don't you say hi to him? No, I don't want to have dinner with some jerk who punched my daddy. Eris scowled and started to open her mouth, but Paul was quicker. Don't say that, kiddo. Sometimes daddy deserves a punch or two. But she didn't do anything wrong, said Norrin, puffing out her little cheeks in an adorable fashion show of indignation. Your big brother and I already made up, okay? Isn't that right, Rudy? Oh boy, he was throwing this over to me, huh? Well, maybe this is an opportunity of sorts, an opportunity to demonstrate my wit and charm. Oh, absolutely, I said with a smile. Want us to kiss and prove it? Huh? Huh? For some reason, the line went over like a lead balloon. Was Paul opposed to the idea of swapping spit with his own son? Actually, I couldn't really blame the guy. I didn't want to kiss him either. Maybe we could just forget I ever said that. Dude, only Mediterranean Europeans kiss. Everybody knows high fantasy is more inspired on the Middle Ages of Great Britain. Plus, those people be cold. Bruh, wait, what? Anyway, the two of us are great friends, are friends again now, Norm. Why don't you make up with your big brother too? No way. Discombobulate, right? Paul patted Norn on the head as she pouted. The golden hairs of hers really was pretty, though. It reminded me of Zenith. Come to think of it, she used to suck up a storm like this whenever something ticked her off. Maybe Norn had inherited that habit from her mother. That one in a weird place. Yeah, that Victor's note was interesting here. After submitting to Paul's petting for a little while, the kid abruptly turned and glared at me. She had to tilt her head backwards just to look me in the face, so the overall effect was more adorable than intimidating. Daddy's trying really hard. Since this comment seemed to be directed at me, I responded with as gently as possible. Yeah, I know he is. He doesn't kiss any girls or anything, so I've heard. I'm sorry to have doubted him. He's always really nice to me too. Norn's little eyes were filling up with tears. Crap, did I say something mean? People don't start bawling, kid. Daddy always looks like he wants to cry. Flustered by Norn's obvious distress, Paul and I looked at each other uncertainly. Wait, really? Well, I got a little... I feel so sorry for him. Neither of us had anything to say to that. How could you beat him up like that? You're so mean. Yeah, but this is finished with the final touch to the chin. My thing is, Norn is still at that stage developmentally where she doesn't know that, hey, yeah, your dad may be a superhero, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have any weaknesses, right? That doesn't mean he has flaws that sometimes need to be called out and shit like that. Happens to all of us. At some point in our life, we all thought our parents were, like, didn't have flaws or were invincible or whatnot. But when you realize that they do, that's when you start the moment of growth and start seeing, like, hey, wait a minute. Maybe I don't want to be like my parents. Maybe I want to start growing and whatnot. I know for Norn, it's a genuine care seeing her dad tear up and cry and do everything. You know, because Norn is just a bystander that's literally seeing everything happen, right? Her sister is proof that Paul is not a saint. But my big thing is, even through that, we have to understand what Norn sees is different than what Rudy sees. What Norn has experienced is a world different than what Rudy has experienced with Paul. And that's sort of where the different worlds of understanding comes in. Zictor's note. Here, Paul represents every father and mother who has ever turned their guts into an extra heart. Brazilian expression that means a lot of effort. To make sure their child has the best possible life. Parents who take on a second or even a third job. Parents who only eat one meal a day so their children can eat 3. I just realized that Norn knows this. She understands it too, even at her young age. She understands her sacrifices Paul is making. She might not be an intellectual prodigy like Aisha, but her empathy and overall understanding of the world are pretty impressive. That and the moodiness she demonstrates later on in the story kind of track with the artistic nature. I didn't even know she had an artistic... Well, I feel like a wizard now. I feel like a wizard now. Thank you. I feel like my wizard powers sometimes come into play at random stages in the world. Now. But through that, I think a big aspect in this is like, yeah, she understands what he's going through, but she's also still trying to keep up that.
Yeah. This is big brain time.
She's trying to keep up like that understanding that like, hey, Paul is Paul. Paul is doing his best, at least for her. Looking at Norn's face, I had to fight the urge.
I predicted all of this, you know. All of it.
Looking at Norn's face, I had to fight the urge to leave a long, heavy sigh. Paul and Norn had been teleported together. I knew all about that now. She'd gotten very sick during their journey back to Fatilla and was nearly attacked by monsters several times along the way. And it was her father who protected her from all those dangers. Yep, that's what Norn experienced. That's her world, yeah. With her mother, maid, and sister missing, and her heart bursting with anxiety, Paul was the only person she could rely on. For years, he was the only family she had left, and some stranger showed up out of nowhere, knocked him down, and started punching him in the face. That would be enough to traumatize most kids her age. Norn, look, that was all my... It's all right, father. She was a little older. The 3 of us might have found a way to talk this through. At her age, though, that was presumably impossible. Both Paul and I had made mistakes and jumped to conclusions. We'd reconciled by acknowledging our faults, but you couldn't expect a child to understand that. Norn is still very young, and if I was in her shoes, I don't think I'd forgive the jerk who punched you either. It was sad that Norn hated me, but there wasn't much I could do about it. We'd just have to talk things through a few years down the road. Once she was older, I was sure she'd understand time's not an infinite resource, but I can at least heal some wounds. What I'm really scared of, I'm gonna stop right there. What I'm really scared of is say that he does heal her, right? And say that something really bad happens to Paul in the future. If Paul doesn't start helping, I guess, both Aisha and Norn healthy boundaries and healthy parataxic distortions, what's not to say that they start to develop a weird parataxic distortion on Rudius? What's not to say that, like, for example, Aisha, right? Because Aisha already sees Big Brother as like a big thing. It's like, you know, this amazing individual doesn't start being like, oh, Big Brother, I became highly successful for you, Big Brother. Wouldn't you want to go ahead and take a peek? Or, you know, even Norn, like, you know, being in a scenario like this where all of a sudden, because dad can't be in the picture, dad is hurt or something, and let's say Rudy takes up the mantle, that shit just starts transitioning over to a scenario like that. That's where I'm afraid of. Aisha already has a parataxic distortion. I know. Take a peek. Hey, yo. I'm just hitting on it because that's a constant thing you see in like relationship stuff. On whether Rudy will shut it down or not. True. True. They could see him as a family friend instead of an older sibling. FBI, open up! Yeah, you're right. No, it's not alright. Evidently, Paul wasn't on board with my plan. Though you guys, you might be the only siblings you got left, okay? I want you to be good to each other. As the meaning of those words sunk in, I frowned at my father. That's a little ominous, don't you think? Yeah, you're right. Sorry. Well, this was no good at all. The mood was getting heavier by the minute. It seemed like it was a time for a change of subject. By the way, father, what's good here? I skipped lunch today, so I'm starving. Not the smoothest transition, no, but Paul seemed to pick up on what I was doing. With a strained smile, he took his cue. Let's see, they've got some tasty seafood stew with fresh fish from the sea down south. Oh, and the beef's good too. They raise a lot of cattle on the farms around here, you know. It actually tastes pretty different from the Asturian kind, especially since they tend to boil it, give it a real nice, rich flavor. Oh, I've got to try that. All the meat on the demon continent was seriously foul. You said it was mostly cuts of great tortoise, right? Yeah, most monsters do taste pretty nasty. The conversation was finally starting to pick up steam, but Norn still had her head turned away. She only responded when Paul said something to her, refusing to even glance in my direction. I'd more or less resigned myself at this point, but it still kind of stung, you know. Of course, this was It's the exact same thing I'd done to Paul just a few days ago. I felt terrible about it in retrospect. Eris wasn't too pleased by Norn's attitude. Judging from the way she was staring at her, I really didn't want this to turn into a fight, but it was best to leave things be for now. Sounds good, Coffee. Appreciate you. Eris wasn't too pleased by Norn. Yeah, anyways. Oh, right there. There was something I was meaning to ask you about, Father. Yeah, what's that? Do you know of anyone of the name Gash Broche? No, where'd you hear that name? I took the chance to tell Paul about Ruijerd's letters and the mysterious friend who'd written it for us. I'd made a rough copy of the emblem on the wax seal, so I took that out and showed it to him. A sheep, a hawk, and a sword. It looks like the family crest of a paladin. I don't think I've ever heard the name Gash Broche, though. Not that I'm familiar with all the Millis nobles or anything. Sector's note, this is a bit cut content from the anime. On the day Eris went slaying goblins and met up with the best boy Cliff, Ruijerd did not follow her. In the novel, he met with an old friend whom he called Gash Broche, who gave him the letter to help him cross into the central continent. This letter was not easily accepted right away, and there was a small confrontation that gets resolved in a very interesting way. This was almost certainly scrapped for the sake of brevity, since the whole thing would have taken half an episode to make. It was an extremely fun moment and a delight to read. It really expands and fleshes out the relationship between characters. It isn't essential to the story and would add an extra chapter of anime only just to keep track of. But this character will show up again in volume 10, 20. It makes sense, especially when they give us a gem of an exclusive in episode 23. If you want, I can add it in, since there are no chapters to expand on Paul, but there are more chapters on Rolls, Lilia, Ghislaine, Roxy, and other white-haired elf. You were suggesting to read this one? Oh, sorry, guys. I see, do you like Shira or something right now? I don't know. It wasn't reassuring that he never asked a guy, but we just have to wait and see. With that topic exhausted, Paul and I went back to chatting about anything and everything that came to mind. Eventually, we landed on the subject of my 10th birthday. According to Paul, the monsters in the forest outside Buena Village had grown much more active in about a month beforehand. And Paul and Zenith had been so busy trying to get the situation under control that they didn't have the time to worry about my presence. They finally managed to clear the forest the day before my 10th birthday, but just as they were getting ready to show me a few things, the calamity took place. As she listened to all of this, Eris pouted, her lips pursed. Come to think of it, she looked really sad when she found out Paul wasn't coming to that party. Just out of curiosity, what are you planning to send me? I was going to send you a pair of gauntlets. It felt a little guilty since I just found them in the back of our storehouse, but they were magic items from the bottom of a labyrinth. Those things were light as feathers, but they never really fit me. But I thought they might look good on you, Rudy. No kidding. Dude, I'm trying to fucking stretch here. No kidding, as I didn't know you had that thing laying around. Yep, Zenith said hers was a secret. But sometimes I noticed Lilia looking at this little locked box with a smile on her face. I'm guessing that was for you too. The holy Wait, where'd the holy panties go? Hold on. Where'd the holy panties go? That's the real question, is where'd the holy panties go? Wait, that's right. Lilia had them, right? Oh no. Oh no, Paul. If Paul knew. Okay, wait, hold on. Let's back it up. If Paul knew about the holy panties, how do you think he would react? Holy panties, yeah. Holy panties were with Lilia. I know, but that's what I'm saying. If Paul knew about the holy relic, how do you think he'd react? Let me also get some water, guys. Give me a second. He would never stop teasing. She's one of the apocalypse. That's the real mystery of MT. Paul might pass him with a sly grin. I feel like Paul would be like, of course. I think it'd be nice. I'd be infinite ammo to him. Oh, dude, that's awesome. That's awesome. A box. Now he had me curious. What could he have been inside that thing? Not that there was much point to think about it. Whatever it was long gone. Sure, we're not going to get that later. But not that they became the holy relic. After this, we somehow got onto the topic of Zenith's family. They were evidently well known among the Millis nobility, and had a history of producing many talented and righteous knights. Unfortunately, my grandparents had basically disowned Zenith when she left home, so they weren't too enthusiastic about helping search for her at first. They changed their tune once they took a good look at Norn, though. This world was different from my old one in a lot of ways, but the power of a cute grandkid was evidently universal. I wonder if they'd give you money if I stopped by. I think that would probably backfire. Yeah, you're right. I could try and act as a sweet little tyke for them, but my true nature would more likely reveal itself in time. It wasn't worth the risk. Not long after this exchange, the waiter finally brought our food to her table. Okay, let's dig in, said Paul, his fork hovering theatrically over the air. What first? This does look appetizing, murmured Eris, studying the spread with shining eyes. She seemed more like Paul's child than I was, honestly. Then again, Paul and Philip were cousins, so maybe this wasn't too bizarre. In any case, this seemed like a golden opportunity to improve Norn's image of me slightly. Father, your manners are... Cut it out, Daddy. You've got to pray before you eat. The two of us had spoken almost simultaneously. Norn looked over at me in surprise, but turned away sulkily a second later. Okay, kids. Fine. Paul scratched his head woefully, and Eris looked a bit reluctant, but both leaned back in the chairs for a moment. The four of us proceeded to say a short Millis-style prayer. All this involved clasping our hands together and closing our eyes for a few seconds. Eris and I weren't believers, and Paul probably wasn't either, but this was just good table manners in this world. When in Rome and all that, you know, we went through the motions without complaint. Victor's no. In terms of technical quality, religion is the worst part of... Oh, I'll leave that for that, man. Norn being the religious granny. Oh, I mean, how many of you guys do that? Whenever you get food, like, you might not even be religious, but you're like, oh, thanks for the food. Like, thanks to the waiters or the person that prepared it or whatnot. Or sometimes, like, people clap their hands and say, like, oh, itadakimasu or something, right? First Sophie, now Roxy. And I thought Paul was a womanizer. Oof, I guess we'll see. We enjoyed our food while chatting about nothing really important. Paul and I did most of the talking, of course. Norn never looked in my direction. For her part, Eris kept mostly silent. Paul did nothing to speak to her, did start to speak to her now and then. But the waves of hostility she admitted were strong enough that he always thought better of it. It was probably wise of him not to poke the beehive. As Eris and I left the restaurant together, I heard her mutter, I guess he kept himself under control this time. Under her breath. Dude, Eris stands you, dude. Eris will fucking go to war for you, man. Eris would do 101 things. Okay, I feel like we have three different like archetypes in this thing. I'll finish this page and I'll talk about it. I didn't want to think about how she might have reacted if Paul yelled at me, let alone taking a swing at me. But since there hadn't been any of that, her desire to murder him might have faded at least slightly. In that sense, at least, they had been productive use of our time. Our week in Millishion came to an end in no time at all. On the day of our departure, we headed into the Adventurers District. We finished loading our stuff into the carriage, and we were just getting ready to head out when Paul showed up to see us off. Hey, Rudy, you sure you don't want to stick around a little longer? Much as I appreciated the sentiment, it was a bit late for that now. I'm sure that would be nice, but we might end up lazing around here for the next year if we don't get moving. You and Norn haven't even made up yet, though. There's time enough to work on that when we found the other three. Hold on. Eris isn't a helicopter parent. She's a tank. Eris is the goddess of war. Okay. We have three different things. We have Roxy, the teacher. Roxy, the one who teaches us to grow. Eris, the one who stands us and goes to war for us, you know. I'm feeling a little tired. I'm feeling a little, you guys can hear it. I'm feeling a little sick. Like, it's hitting me. And we have Sylphie, who's like the caregiver. Why do I feel like Sylphie is the healer? Sylphie is the one that can heal Rudy in a way. Roxy can teach Rudy, and Eris can form Rudy, can chisel Rudy. That's sort of the three things that I'm noticing about the characters and the way they're being set up. Sort of like Sylphie is that friend who, if we're gonna take it quite literally, got completely, you know, Rudy connected with in a bear-to-bear moment to form their relationship. They were complete, like, that's when Rudy found out about boundaries and they were able to go ahead and heal through their friendship and whatnot, right? With Roxy, Rudy did learn. Rudy started learning and, you know, becoming a better individual by taking those steps forward and confronting a lot. Well, Sylphie helped Rudy not feel lonely, right? She helped heal him. in season 1. Roxy helped Rudy confront his trauma by learning about this world, by taking those steps forward. And Eris helped shape him into finding his desires and stuff and finding his meaning. Is that's my understanding of the characters. I.e., if Rudy gets hurt, I think Sophie would be the one to heal him. If he is lost and needs more knowledge, Roxy is the one to take him there. If he needs to find determination or needs to find some passion back in his life, Eris is the one that puts it in that. Considering those, so without Roxy, he wouldn't have met either Sophie or Eris. If Rudy wasn't in this world, I feel like Roxy would have met, for some reason, if Roxy came to this town for whatever reason, I feel like she would have met Sophie, though. They'd probably have a great relationship. I don't know why. I get a weird feeling. I'm just saying, like, I feel like, let's take Rudy out of the equation. Let's say Roxy was sent to Buena Village for whatever reason. I feel as though seeing, Roxy would project aspects of herself onto Sophie, and they would start to develop off of that. And we still need to see where Sophie went after the disaster. True. You know what all happened there. I think this is actually pretty awesome, man. I'm not gonna lie. I like the way that they're building up these characters as like different forms of healing, right? Because there's the intellectual form of healing, which Roxy helped Rudy get through. The intellectual form of like healing through our traumas, as opposed to other methods out there. I think that's huge. I think that's actually really interesting. Anyway. Also, this wasn't just about me. I glanced over at Eris. Rudyard had seized her by the scruff of her neck as a precautionary measure, but she was still glaring daggers at Paul. I might have overestimated this girl's ability to quickly move on. And I'm not the only one who wants to see their family, you know. Right, of course. But the Boreas is probably... With the trailer analysis. Oh, thank you. Let's not talk about it, I said, cutting Paul off with the movement in my hand. It's possible that Philip and Soros will be waiting for us when we get back to Fatoa, you know? The news might have not made it here yet. Right, yeah, that's true, but you know, Rudy... Paul pressed for a moment, his face growing grim. You really shouldn't be too optimistic about that. Even if the two of them do make it back alive, there's no telling what might happen to them after a disaster of this scale. What do you mean by that? Paul lowered his voice just a little bit. Philip's brother James is busy trying to save his own neck. There's a chance he'd push all the blame of this mess onto one of them. Wow. The idea hadn't occurred to me before, but it sounded plausible. Soros was the Lord of Fatoa, and Philip was a mayor of Roa. They both held major positions of authority. Even if they made it back home, they might be held responsible for the massive loss of life and property that caused by the calamity. I didn't know exactly what that would mean, but at the very least, it was hard to imagine they'd get to step back into their old roles and rebuild their power. In fact, it would be that surprising if someone had them assassinated immediately. That would prevent Philip's brother from using them as scapegoats, making it far easier to corner him politically. True. If things do look ugly, just make sure to keep the little lady safe. Some people might trot out of there of a bunch of crap about the duties and of the nobility, but you don't have to pay them any mind. Of course, I said. Ain't that interesting? Because Eris gets back and all of a sudden there's duties and you're a noble and blah, 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 blah. I said, noting with the most serious expression I could muster, I'll be careful, father. Paul smiled proudly and nodded. Oh, and I asked Cher about that letter, by the way. She said she never heard of that guy either. I see. She did say he probably wasn't anyone dangerous, though. All right, then. Would you mind thanking her for me? Paul nodded slightly, and then finally he turned around and spoke to a little girl who'd been standing behind him. Come on, Norn. Don't you want to say goodbye to your big brother? Don't wanna. Norn moved from her hiding spot behind her father. Half her face was peeking, though. Talk about adorable. I found myself wondering if she'd grow into a beauty like her mother. I don't know how long it'll take, Norn, but let's meet again someday. Don't wanna. Oof. Right until the very end, my little sister refused to look me in the face, smiling awkwardly as I headed back to our carriage. And just like that, our party left the city of Millishion behind. I can read the pulse section here. That's deep, though. Well, the issue with that, enlist us as voice actors. The issue with that is I don't know how it would take for fucking YouTube. I'm not sure if there's like, if all the talk to like, you know, talk to speech voices or whatever, or like copyrighted whenever it's like you're reading from a light novel or something like that. I think that's something we have to go out and look at. He could have reported it to the royal court mage, and you had court mages or someone knowledgeable to analyze it. True. Yeah, that's true as well. Yeah. Otherwise, I would totally fucking throw it on. You know, I fucking crank up the speed. I mean, copyright can strike for reading from the light novels already. Oh, it depends as to what you're adding, right? And I think that's a big portion like that. My thing is, if you had to say goodbye to your dad like that, that's already a big responsibility. I've even had cases when people saying the whole thing like an audiobook had been taken down. Yeah. That's why it's like we got to be a little careful about like the way we talk about things and what we're analyzing and what we're talking about. Specifically when it comes to a moment like this, right? Like, if you were in Rudy's shoes, would you continue going forward or would you stay with your dad? That's a big question I have for myself. Just like that, Rudius was back on the road again. This kid was impressive as ever. He figured out his plans in no time and then put them into action immediately. Elena Liz once told me I was rushing through my life, didn't she? You have to wonder what she'd think if she got a look at him. It might be fun to get the two of them to meet sometime, but maybe that wasn't such a great idea. Yeah, the last thing I wanted was to end up as that woman's father-in-law. Dude, Elena Liz would fucking milk Rudy dry, dude. Rudy would be throwing out fucking like polvo, like just a bunch of like dust at that point, dude. I honestly would have stayed with dad. I'm not an adventuring. Just as I'd reached this conclusion, someone slapped me on the shoulder. I turned to find the monkey-faced man grinning at me. Hey there, Paul. You done saying goodbye to your son? Geese, I was grateful to this jerk. More grateful than I could express in words. If it wasn't for him, I probably would never made up with Rudius. I seriously owe you one, man. Hey, don't sweat it. At this point, I noticed that Geese was dressed for the road. What's with you, though? You going somewhere? Yeah, not sure where just yet. Just plenty of places you folks ain't poked around yet, right? It took a moment for me to realize what he was saying. Geese was going to keep on searching for my family. That came as a shock, frankly. Of all the members in my old party, Geese had struggled the most after I disbanded it. He wasn't a fighter, but a jack of all trades without any real specialties. No other party could take him in, and he wasn't strong enough to handle tough jobs on his own. He'd been forced to leave the adventuring life behind. He had all the reason in the world to resent me, even hate me. Why are you doing this, Geese? Why are you trying so hard to find them? The corners of Geese's mouth twitched up to his usual ironic smile. Just feels like my fortune. And with that typically cryptic explanation, he turned and walked away. I put my hands on my hips and watched him go with the wry smile on my face. The man had a lot of ideas about luck, and none of them had ever made much sense to me. But this time I wasn't exactly complaining. All right, then. Once Geese disappeared from you, I reached down and hoisted Norn up on my shoulders. All of a sudden, I was bursting with energy and motivation. First things first, we had to make sure that the refugee relocation operation went off without a hitch. And once that was done with, I'd finally find the rest of my family, no matter what it took. With my resolve fixed firmly in my heart, I headed back into the city. I think being Paul's kid might have burnt that bridge. Oof. Also, I think Geese as a character is really interesting because he has nothing to gain out of this. So what is he searching for? If he doesn't have anything to gain out of a situation, what is he in for? What is he thinking about? And that's a big moment that I'm like, so he's a therapist. But my thing is, it feels like he's more on a mission for something. Like he's been instructed to do something, to go out and like gather information, go out. Because the way that he even like, I'm still thinking about him and Rudy when they were in the beast thing, right? And the way he was getting information and like lending information was so, his therapeutic approach to shit is so like, I don't know. There's a lot of red flags that pop up for me. Also, I'm kind of curious, if they searched all the land for the family, how about searching under the land for the family. Let's get some like LiDAR technology, right? Let's search them caves, boy. Let's search up and around and down and in between and whatnot. I don't know, man. Maybe he has a trauma where his mom told him he must help others at his own cost. I hope not. I hope not. That would be a lot, dude. That would be a fuck lot. Guys, what an incredible chapter. What an incredible chapter. I think in terms of understanding the characters a little bit more specifically, how they had at least one more meeting together where they were able to just eat. And let's talk about that. What is eating, guys? Let's talk about that a little bit more, about what we just read. What is eating? Yeah, it's a way that unites us. And I think that having that story, though, having the story of them just eating is huge. Breaking bread, yeah, being able to come together, being able to go and talk about shit. I think that's huge. I think that's beautiful. That is an absolutely beautiful way of approaching this story. I'm blown away. I'm blown away because not a lot of people would like put emphasis on that. I never noticed that Geese was mimicking Rudy in jail until you mentioned it in your watch through, and it's in the novel too. JP, oh shit. Well, I'm glad. I hope, like, that's the overall thing. Whenever I go through instances like this, I hope that people get at least something out of it. Eating is bonding. Exactly, school. And eating is showing, hey, we're no longer enemies. How can we be enemies if we're eating, like, food together, you know? Like, we must be on good or better terms. I think that this is really interesting. For me, this is one of the few chapters that has taken me back and has made me analyze. Even, for example, Paul didn't have to go and say goodbye. He did. He took time out of his schedule to go say goodbye. I liked how Eris was orbiting Rudy like a satellite, ready to strike Paul if he did anything wrong. Mirroring is just a Riz strategy. Mirroring is a Riz strategy, but it's also a strategy for getting people to open up, or for getting people to go ahead and, like, you know, propinquity, to build propinquity. This is interesting, man. This is really, really, really interesting. And the more that I think about it, the more I'm like, where is this gonna go? Where is this gonna go, man? My heart is racing, knees weak, arms are heavy. Go position cannon. I'm so excited, guys. What is your takeaway from this chapter? Did you guys like the way that they're actually kind of resolved, but not really resolved the issues? I think Norn will grow into it at some point in time. But I think Eris might be a little bit atomic and ready to go and destroy everything. It also allows Rudy to really treasure his parents when he didn't treasure his past parents. True. It allows him to break bread when he wouldn't have done that as Earthius. Earthius would not have broken bread, but Rudius does. What do you think the theme of season 2 will be? Change. I think the theme of season 2 is going to be change. It's going to be healing and change. How sometimes we need to heal in order to change, I think. I also think this chapter is also nice setup for Norn's trauma due to episode 16 and 17. Yeah. It's a wonderful way of, like, opening up. This would have been a cool OVA or a cool little, like, in-between thing. You know, or just like an expanded thing if they've broken that down even further. Because that's a lot of shit to go through. Maybe he needs something from Paul and Rudy, but realized this isn't the time. Yeah. I feel like Geese is going to be the one that, like, discovers where things are, and then it might lead to some unfortunate series of events. I don't know. Geese is the type of come on, Ed. Change is the theme of the story from what we have seen. Okay, how about the theme is... What could the theme of the next season be? Markets... establishing your market, healing through love and sex and yourself, and finding a partner, and studying, and demi-humans, and just fucking start throwing out random shit out there. Sex, and no, the overall main thing of Mushoku Tensei is change. And all the theories coming out now. Yeah, no, of course, right.
That works. You can add it on what you mentioned during it. Demi-humans, STDs, gotcha. I know. What are they gonna explore in Mushoku Tensei? What like demi-humans and heat or something? Come on, bro. Come on. I am so fucking curious about this show, though. I am so curious about Mushoku Tensei and literally where we're gonna go through with this.